I'm Gary Bembridge of Tips for Travelers. I'm going to tell you about the 9 amazing things that you absolutely should do if you're on an Alaska Inside Passage cruise. Now, for many people, an Alaska cruise is a once-in-a-lifetime event. So I'm going to really focus on things that are going to make that once-in-a-lifetime really, really special. So let's first of all start by talking about Juneau. Juneau is actually the capital of Alaska. It's been the capital since 1906. And it was originally founded by 2 prospectors, Richard Harris and Joseph Juneau, when they discovered that there was gold in the area with the help of a local chief, Cowie. It started a major gold rush and many people flooded into what first was called Harrisburg and eventually became known as Juneau. About 30,000 people lived there. The gold mines closed in 1940 and now its real heart is the administrative capital of Alaska and of course tourism. So what should you do in Juneau? Now, many people will go and see the Mendenhall Glacier, which is the big glacier which is convenient for Juneau. However, what I recommend is you go dog sledding. This is a helicopter trip where you board helicopters and you fly off over Juneau, you go over the Juneau ice field, you see magnificent glaciers, and eventually you land at the Norris Glacier. Here there's around about 150 dogs which spend the whole season up there, and you get the chance to then go dog sledding. It's absolutely magical up there. It's so quiet, it's so peaceful, it's an incredible experience. Once you finish the event, you get a chance to interact with the dogs before the helicopters bring more people and you board the helicopters and fly back to Juneau. This is probably, for me, one of the most magical travel experiences I've ever had. It is, though, rather costly. So if you go to the Norris Glacier dog sledding, it's going to cost you at least around about $630 per person. The dog mushing on the Mendenhall Glacier is a little bit less. But if you're going on a once-in-a-lifetime trip to Alaska, you may want to consider going dog sledding. But I would strongly recommend get up onto the glacier, even if it's just a landing trip. The other great thing to do in Juneau is to head up the Mount Roberts tramway. Now this tramway heads up to one of the 2 mountains that are in Juneau. So you've got the Mount Roberts and you've got the Mount Juneau. The Mount Roberts tramway opened in 1996. It's one of the steepest cable car rides in the world, and it's a great way to get incredible views, even in wet and rainy weather, which is what you're normally going to find in Alaska. The third thing to do in Juneau, which is very popular, which is to visit the Red Dog Saloon. Now the Red Dog Saloon dates right back to the ancient mining days. You often have to queue to get in, it's so popular, and it's very renowned for drinks, food, and a great party atmosphere. Now the second port I want to talk about is Skagway. Skagway is right in the northern part of the Inside Passage, the most northern town. Skagway became famous as the gateway to the Klondike. So when gold was discovered up in the Klondike, in the Yukon, in Canada, this became an incredibly important place. It was one of the easiest ways of reaching the gold, even though it was many, many hundreds of miles away. 30,000 prospectors headed to Skagway to then try and make their way to the Klondike, either using the Chilkoot or the White Pass to get to where the gold was discovered. Now, the most important thing to do in Skagway is to go on the White Pass and Yukon Railway. This was built to not only help prospectors find an easier way to get to the gold, but also became really important for carrying all the ore and the cargo back. The railway ran right up from the turn of the century, the 1900s, right up until 1982. It was then resurrected in the late 1990s as a tourist attraction, which travels from Skagway, the town, up many thousands of feet right up to the White Pass, where it turns around and comes back down again. It's about a 40-mile return trip up to the top of the White Pass and back down. There's 2 ways of going on the train. The first is, which is the bulk of the train, is the standard class. There is also, though, if you really want to make it very special, the premium carriage. Premium carriage costs 3 times the amount of the standard carriage. So standard is around about $130 US, and the premium is about $320 US. There's only 14 people in this carriage. You have big, comfy seats. You have a guide just for the carriage who serves drinks, who serves food, and gives you commentary all the way. Now, all of the carriages do have viewing platforms. The great thing they do is there's normally a train allocated for each of the ships that are in port that day, and they come right to the ship and they pick up passengers from the ship. Now, the second thing I would do if you're in Skagway is actually spend time exploring the town. It's the most authentic and most old world looking of all of the places that you're going to visit in the Inside Passage. So many of the buildings are either recreations or restored buildings. There's some great tours and history about the gold rush, and there's lots of great things to do just strolling around the town. So the next spot I want to talk about is Ketchikan. Ketchikan emerged and grew out of a native fishing camp, and it really became important and developed in the late 1800s when a salmon cannery was founded in Ketchikan, and really it became the salmon canning capital of the world. Later on, it also became well known for forestry and lumberjacking, and it also became a really important port as prospectors moved up towards Skagway. Today, it is now really reliant on tourism. So what should you do in Ketchikan? Well, there's three things that I recommend. First of these is great fun. It's the Great Alaskan Lumberjack Show on the site of the old Ketchikan spruce mill. Now, unfortunately, you're not allowed to video at the show, so I can just show you sort of these kind of stills of what goes on, but there's a whole series of different tasks. The lumberjacks are split into two groups. The United States versus Canada. It's become a bit of an institution and is very, very popular. The second thing, which is another institution in Ketchikan, is called Creek Street. Now, Creek Street is a series of very beautiful buildings which are built over the water. Now, much of Ketchikan is actually built over the water on stilts. Creek Street is the old red light district, and between early 1900s, about 1902, up until 1954, it was the heart of the red light district and prostitution within Ketchikan. There's some very beautiful buildings, lots of stories behind them, including places like Dolly's House, which is one of the most famous madams in the area and is now a museum. The third thing, which is slightly more cultural, is Totem Bite. So the park was originally created right back in the 1930s when it was realized that as many of the indigenous native people were starting to move to the centers to look for work, there was a real concern that some of the heritage and the culture would be lost, particularly the beautiful totems that were created, these sort of storytelling totems, and many of them were just abandoned as people started to migrate towards the more urban centers. So the decision was made to start to collect and protect and preserve these, and also keep the art of totem making alive. It's not far out of Ketchikan. You can get there on the sort of trolley bus, which does tours of the city and heads out there. Now, the fourth destination that I want to talk about, you're not actually going to get off the ship when you get there, and this is Glacier Bay. Now, one of the big watch outs I would have is if you're heading into the Inside Passage on any cruise, take a look and see whether you're going to be going to Glacier Bay. So only 2 cruise ships a day are allowed in there, so there's very limited amount of ships that go in there. So I, for example, cruised with Holland America. Now, Holland America have been operating in Alaska for over 70 years, and they are one of the cruise lines that will go into Glacier Bay just because they've been doing it for so long. If you don't go to Glacier Bay, you may be going to some other places like Tracy Arm. But Glacier Bay is the most magical and important place of all to see glaciers. Well, its official name is the Glacier Bay National Park and Preserve. It's 3.2 million acres. There's a number of really beautiful, massive tidewater glaciers. The main ones you'll see are the Reed Glacier, the John Hopkins Glacier, and the most impressive of all, which is the Marjorie Glacier. Wrap up warm. Make sure you brought a great camera, ideally with a zoom lens on, or even just go out there and enjoy it. Make sure that you spend most of the day out on deck. So you'll normally spend the whole morning cruising between these different glaciers. Representatives from the national parks will be on the ship, and they will be giving commentary during the day. Once you get to things like the Marjorie Glacier, the ship will spend some time there because one of the things that everyone wants to see is the carving of the glacier. Now, you're very likely to see this happen because it happens all the time during the day. But very importantly, make sure that you are on a cruise line that is going into Glacier Bay because, in my view, nothing beats Glacier Bay, and you are going to be shortchanged if you are on a cruise that goes into one of the other inlets. If you're on an Inside Passage cruise, there are 4 things that you are definitely going to be doing. You're going to be going to Juneau, Skagway, Ketchikan, and you're going to be cruising through one of the inlets like Glacier Bay. To make your cruise, which is probably a once-in-a-lifetime cruise, I've suggested 9 things that you absolutely should do. I really believe these made my Alaska Inside Passage cruise magical, and I would definitely do them again if I was going again. Hopefully you found that helpful. I have a whole series of other videos about Alaska cruising with lots of tips and advice on things to do, so please watch those as well. The thing I'd love you to do, if you enjoyed the video, is give the video a like, and very importantly, please subscribe to Tips for Travelers and you'll get much more travel inspiration, advice and tips.